The countdown has begun. These 10 Asian nations on the brink of collapse by 2025. History is filled with empires that thought they would last forever, until they didn't. The countdown has begun. Have you ever wondered which Asian nations are on the brink of collapse by 2025? Could it be an economic giant like China or India? Or perhaps struggling nations like Pakistan and Sri Lanka? Maybe, just maybe, it's a country no one sees coming. Asia, the fastest growing continent, is also a region of immense uncertainty. From financial meltdowns to political turmoil, the challenges ahead are more alarming than you might think. What you're about to discover will change the way you see the future of these nations. Before we unravel this gripping story, I have a small request. If you're finding this exploration eye-opening, take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to the Journey of Wisdom. It's a simple action, but it allows us to continue bringing powerful insights your way. Together, we can spread awareness and wisdom. Now, let's dive into the shocking realities that await. Stay tuned, because the nation at the top of this list might just surprise you. Number 1. The Maldives. The Maldives, long celebrated as a paradise of turquoise waters and pristine beaches, now stands at the edge of a dire reality. Beneath its breathtaking beauty lies a crisis that threatens its very existence, one driven by the relentless forces of climate change, economic instability, and social inequality. The rising sea levels are not just an abstract warning for the future, they are a present and accelerating danger, swallowing shorelines inch by inch. As a nation built on a fragile collection of low-lying islands, the Maldives faces a battle against time, where every passing year brings it closer to the possibility of losing not just land, but its entire way of life. Tourism, the lifeblood of its economy, has indeed recovered after the pandemic, but it remains precariously dependent on external forces. The nation imports nearly everything it consumes, from food to essential goods, making it highly vulnerable to global supply chain disruptions. When the waves rise, when supply chains break, and when economic pressures mount, the people of the Maldives have little room to maneuver. Their government, grappling with public debt that has soared beyond 100% of the gross domestic product, finds itself stretched thin, caught in a cycle of borrowing with no clear escape. As the cost of living surges, inequality deepens, and the social fabric begins to fray, leaving communities struggling to invest in long-term resilience. Buddhist wisdom reminds us, no matter how hard the past, you can always begin again. But for the Maldives, beginning again requires more than just hope. It demands action, foresight, and an unwavering commitment to sustainable adaptation. The nation's limited landmass leaves little room for economic diversification, making it dependent on international aid and urgent climate mitigation strategies. Without them, the Maldives may soon transition from a thriving nation to a cautionary tale, a modern-day Atlantis consumed by the rising tides. Yet this is not just the Maldives' crisis. It is a mirror reflecting the world's failure to confront environmental destruction. Climate change does not respect borders, nor does it pause for political negotiations. Every island lost is a warning to us all, reminding us that, in a world of interconnected fates, no nation stands alone. In modern life, we are often consumed by our own struggles, failing to see the larger shifts shaping our world. But just like the Maldives, individuals too can face moments of crisis, financial burdens, external dependencies, and personal storms that seem insurmountable. The lesson here is resilience. Just as the Maldives must urgently seek innovative solutions, such as floating islands, sustainable tourism, and self-sufficiency in resources, we too must adapt in times of adversity. Instead of relying solely on external forces, we must cultivate inner strength, financial wisdom, and preparedness for uncertainties. The Buddha once said, "Just as a solid rock is not shaken by the storm, even so, the wise remain unmoved by praise or blame." The tides will rise, both literally and metaphorically. But those who prepare, who learn to stand firm in the face of adversity, will endure. The Maldives struggle serves as a stark reminder. We must act before it is too late, both as individuals and as a global community, because the countdown has begun, and time waits for no one. Number 2, Laos. Laos, a nation rich in culture and history, faces an uphill battle as it struggles against deep-rooted economic challenges. As we inch closer to 2025, the warning signs are becoming clearer. Laos is teetering on the edge of financial collapse. The country's debt-to-GDP ratio skyrocketed beyond 90% by 2023, with a massive chunk of this debt owed to China, creating an unsustainable economic burden. Its reliance on hydropower as a primary revenue source has proven to be a risky gamble. Droughts and fluctuating energy prices have left the nation vulnerable, exposing the fragility of an economy that leans too heavily on a single industry. At the same time, inflation has spiraled out of control, causing the value of the kip to plummet, making everyday necessities harder to afford for ordinary citizens. Importing goods has become increasingly expensive, exacerbating the struggles of businesses and families alike. Yet despite these mounting problems, the pace of infrastructure development remains painfully slow, and corruption continues to drain resources that could otherwise be used to rebuild the economy. With these barriers in place, how can Laos expect to climb out of this economic quagmire before it's too late? The reality is grim. Without decisive action and structural reforms, the country is headed for a financial crisis that could push more people into extreme poverty, leaving them with fewer opportunities and little hope for a better future. Even more concerning is the lack of technological advancement in key sectors, which prevents Laos from competing in an increasingly digital and globalized world. Innovation could be the key to breaking free from this cycle of poverty. Yet investments in education, research and development remain insufficient. So, what does this mean for the people of Laos? Will the next generation be left to inherit a nation shackled by debt, struggling with inflation and unable to carve out a sustainable future? The lessons here are clear. Economic resilience depends on diversification, transparency, and forward-thinking policies. Without these, dependence on a single industry or a foreign lender can turn into a nation's downfall. The time for change is now, before the clock runs out. Will Laos be able to rewrite its fate, or will it succumb to the weight of its own financial missteps? Number 3, Bangladesh. Bangladesh stands at a crucial crossroads, ranking third among the nations facing potential collapse by 2025. While the country has enjoyed remarkable economic growth over recent decades, its underlying vulnerabilities are becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. One of the most pressing threats is climate change. Rising sea levels threaten to displace millions, while devastating floods and cyclones continue to batter the nation, destroying essential infrastructure and crippling the agriculture sector that feeds its people. When natural disasters strike, they do not just wash away homes and roads, they also erode livelihoods, pushing families deeper into poverty. The garment industry, which has long been the backbone of Bangladesh's economy, is facing significant pressure from shifting global demands, rising production costs, and increased competition from other low-cost manufacturing hubs. What happens if this vital industry falters? Can the economy withstand the shock, or will it send ripples across the entire workforce, leaving millions jobless? Meanwhile, political instability and widespread corruption are creating a climate of uncertainty, discouraging both foreign and domestic investment. As trust in leadership erodes, economic confidence dwindles, and without urgent reforms, Bangladesh could find itself reversing years of hard-earned progress. But beyond the economic turmoil, there is a deeper issue, one that affects every citizen on a personal level. The relentless surge of urbanization, combined with inadequate infrastructure, is pushing cities like Dhaka to the brink of collapse. Overcrowding, traffic congestion, and poor public services are turning daily life into a struggle, while rural communities remain trapped in a cycle of poverty due to lack of access to education and healthcare. How can a nation truly progress when such stark inequalities persist? The Buddha once said, "A jug fills drop by drop," reminding us that sustainable development requires continuous, mindful effort. Without strategic investments in education, healthcare, and disaster resilience, Bangladesh risks widening the gap between rich and poor, leaving millions without a secure future. The question is, will the country take decisive action in time, or will it allow these challenges to spiral out of control? The countdown has begun, and the choices made today will determine whether Bangladesh thrives or collapses in the years ahead. You're still here, you're already ahead of the curve in understanding these urgent global changes. Drop a future watch in the comments to show you're paying attention. But don't look away just yet. There's more to uncover about the forces pushing these nations toward collapse. Stay with us until the end to grasp the full picture. Number 4. Lebanon. Lebanon is teetering on the edge of a full-scale economic and social collapse, with its struggles intensifying as the years progress. Once considered the Paris of the Middle East, Lebanon now finds itself in a dire state, burdened by a financial crisis that has wiped out livelihoods and drained the hope of millions. Since 2019, the Lebanese pound has lost more than 90% of its value, causing an inflationary spiral that has rendered everyday necessities unaffordable. Savings have been reduced to mere scraps, and the middle class, once the backbone of the nation, has almost entirely disappeared into the growing sea of poverty. The harsh reality is that over 80% of Lebanon's population now struggles to afford even basic necessities such as food, medicine, and electricity. Power outages have become a routine part of life, leaving people in darkness for long hours each day, while essential goods, from fuel to clean water, remain scarce. The sense of desperation is palpable as the country inches closer to complete economic and social collapse. What makes Lebanon's crisis even more alarming is the deep-seated political paralysis that has gripped the nation for years. Corruption runs rampant at every level of governance, preventing the necessary reforms that could alleviate the suffering of millions. The leadership remains entangled in sectarian divisions, prioritizing self-interest over the well-being of the people, which has led to a prolonged state of stagnation. The youth, once full of promise and ambition, are now faced with staggering unemployment rates, forcing many to seek opportunities abroad or, worse, remain trapped in a system that offers no future. When a country loses its young, educated workforce to migration, it further accelerates its downward spiral, leaving behind an aging population that struggles to sustain itself. The lack of trust in institutions and the widespread feeling of hopelessness fuel an atmosphere of unrest, making social stability increasingly fragile. If these issues remain unaddressed, Lebanon is not just at risk of economic devastation. It is facing the potential for mass protests, civil strife, and a breakdown of law and order that could spill over into the already volatile Middle East. Further compounding Lebanon's troubles is the immense pressure of hosting over 1 million Syrian refugees. While Lebanon has shown incredible resilience and generosity in providing sanctuary, the truth is that its already crumbling infrastructure cannot sustain such an overwhelming burden. Schools, hospitals, and public services, already stretched to their limits, are unable to meet the needs of both citizens and refugees alike. The strain on resources has fueled tensions among communities, creating an atmosphere of division and frustration. In a country where unemployment and inflation are at record highs, competition for jobs and basic services has heightened, further deepening the crisis. Without immediate international support and a clear plan for economic recovery, Lebanon's future looks increasingly grim. The lesson to take from Lebanon's struggle is that economic mismanagement, political corruption, and social neglect create a perfect storm that can bring even the most resilient nations to their knees. For those watching from afar, this serves as a powerful reminder that stability is never guaranteed. Without accountability and reform, any country can find itself on a similar path. As individuals, we must advocate for transparency, demand competent leadership, and never take economic security for granted. No nation is immune to crisis, but those that prioritize the well-being of their people, invest in education and infrastructure, and foster a culture of responsibility stand a far better chance of withstanding adversity. If Lebanon is to have any hope of recovery, it must act swiftly, embracing reforms that place its people above politics and ensuring that the mistakes of the past do not dictate the future. Number 5. Afghanistan. Afghanistan stands as the fifth most vulnerable nation on the brink of collapse, grappling with an overwhelming crisis that only deepens with time. Decades of war have left scars that extend far beyond the battlefield, seeping into every aspect of daily life. Since the Taliban reclaimed power in 2021, the nation has faced severe economic isolation, burdened by crippling sanctions and the abrupt withdrawal of international aid. The result? A humanitarian catastrophe where millions are trapped in extreme poverty, struggling just to secure a meal. Nearly half of the population faces food insecurity, a statistic that underscores the sheer desperation gripping the country. Inflation has skyrocketed, making basic necessities like bread and medicine unattainable for countless families. The banking system, once fragile, is now on the verge of collapse, leaving people without access to their own money or any means of financial stability. Beyond the economic turmoil, Afghanistan's social landscape has suffered devastating setbacks, particularly for women. Once promised progress, their rights have been systematically stripped away, silencing voices and dreams that once held hope for change. With girls banned from higher education and women barred from many workplaces, half the population has been excluded from shaping the nation's future. This regression has drawn worldwide condemnation, but words alone cannot reverse the damage. The country's intellectual and professional class continues to flee, further draining Afghanistan of the minds and skills needed to rebuild. Infrastructure projects have stalled, cities remain in decay, and rural areas are left even more isolated. Without immediate and meaningful intervention, the nation's humanitarian crisis is poised to spiral into a full-scale collapse by 2025. To make matters worse, Afghanistan's reliance on the opium trade only deepens its instability. While this illicit economy provides income for many, it also fuels corruption, strengthens criminal networks, and keeps the country trapped in cycles of exploitation. Resources that could be used for schools, hospitals, and rebuilding efforts are instead funneled into sustaining an industry that benefits only a few, while devastating the nation as a whole. How can a country move forward when its greatest source of income is also one of its greatest sources of destruction? With no clear economic alternatives and ongoing political repression, Afghanistan's path toward recovery remains uncertain. The world is watching, but is it listening? Will Afghanistan be left to crumble under the weight of its struggles? Or will global efforts rise to provide real, lasting solutions? The road ahead is uncertain, but one truth is clear. Without action, millions will continue to suffer. If history has taught us anything, it is that no nation can survive in isolation forever. The people of Afghanistan deserve more than just survival. They deserve a future built on stability, education, and opportunity. What role can we as a global community play in ensuring that hope is not lost? Perhaps the lesson here is not just about Afghanistan's fate, but about our collective responsibility to uplift those on the brink before it's too late. Number 6. North Korea. North Korea, a nation shrouded in secrecy, faces a crisis that is becoming harder to ignore. Beneath the facade of a tightly controlled regime, the country is grappling with an economy on the brink of collapse, crushed under the immense pressure of international sanctions and prolonged isolation. With the year 2025 fast approaching, the cracks in its foundation are widening. Food shortages have reached critical levels, leaving millions in rural areas on the verge of starvation. The government continues to pour its limited resources into military development, prioritizing power and control over the well-being of its people. But what happens when a country invests more in weapons than in food, healthcare, and infrastructure? The answer is unfolding in real time. A slow but inevitable descent into economic and humanitarian disaster. The economic hardship is further compounded by North Korea's deteriorating trade relations with its key ally, China. In past years, China served as a lifeline, keeping the North Korean economy afloat through trade and limited aid. However, a global economic slowdown has led even China to scale back its support, leaving Pyongyang increasingly isolated. Without external economic relief and with no signs of internal reform, the country is trapped in a vicious cycle of stagnation and decline. What will happen when even the few remaining lifelines disappear? North Korea's leadership operates on unpredictability, using threats and displays of military strength to maintain its grip on power. But how long can this strategy sustain a nation teetering on the edge? Beyond the economy, the country's crumbling infrastructure adds another layer of suffering. The roads, railways, and energy systems are outdated and poorly maintained, further crippling the already struggling distribution of essential supplies. Imagine a nation where even basic necessities, food, clean water, medicine, are beyond reach for the majority. The suffering is immense, yet any attempt to fix the situation is met with government resistance, as maintaining absolute control takes precedence over real solutions. the slow accumulation of suffering, neglect, and mismanagement will eventually reach a tipping point. When that moment arrives, the consequences will be felt not only within North Korea, but across the entire East Asian region. The question is no longer if North Korea will collapse, but when, and what the world will do when that moment comes. What do you think? Is there a way out of this crisis? Or is North Korea heading toward an irreversible fate? The countdown is ticking, and if you're still watching, you know how critical this situation is. Type "crisis alert" in the comments to join the conversation, but the most shocking insights are still ahead. Stay with us to discover what could happen next. Number 7. Myanmar. Myanmar, a nation once poised for economic progress, now teeters on the edge of collapse, shackled by the enduring consequences of the 2021 military coup. The political turmoil has fractured the country, dragging its economy into a downward spiral, with a rapidly devaluing currency, dwindling foreign investments, and a growing humanitarian catastrophe. Sanctions imposed by the international community have further crippled its economic landscape, exacerbating an already dire situation where millions are caught in the crossfire between the ruling military and resistance groups. The displacement of countless families has only deepened the crisis, leaving a once thriving nation in a state of survival rather than development. As the Buddha once said, "Hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love." This is the eternal rule. Yet, Myanmar's current path is one of conflict, where the cycle of violence breeds only suffering and devastation, distancing the nation further from peace and stability. The once promising economy, previously attracting foreign investments and emerging as a regional trade hub, has now collapsed under the weight of political uncertainty and a lack of governance. With industries crippled and businesses shutting down, jobs have disappeared, forcing people into poverty and despair. The erosion of essential services such as healthcare and education means that the future of an entire generation is at risk, as the youth, who should be the driving force of progress, are deprived of opportunities to learn and grow. A nation without education is a nation without a future, and Myanmar's crisis is not just about the present turmoil, but about the long-term consequences that will shape its destiny. The famous Chinese proverb warns, "A nation's treasure is in its scholars," yet here, the minds of tomorrow are being neglected, leaving little hope for recovery. Beyond its borders, Myanmar's struggles send ripples across Southeast Asia, as neighboring countries bear the burden of an escalating refugee crisis. Thousands flee the country daily, seeking safety in places that are already stretched thin, leading to tensions between nations and further complicating international relations. These mass migrations not only strain resources, but also pose security risks, as instability within Myanmar spills over, making regional peace increasingly fragile. If left unchecked, the collapse of Myanmar could have far-reaching consequences, turning a national crisis into a broader catastrophe. As Lao Tzu wisely observed, if you do not change direction, you may end up where you are heading. The path Myanmar is on is one of deepening chaos, and without immediate intervention, whether through diplomatic efforts, humanitarian aid, or internal reform, it risks becoming a cautionary tale of a nation undone by its own conflicts. For those watching from afar, Myanmar's struggles serve as a stark reminder that political instability and economic mismanagement can dismantle even the most promising of nations. In a world that is interconnected, no country exists in isolation. The suffering of one inevitably affects many. What Myanmar needs now is not more division but unity, not more violence but a collective effort to rebuild. The road to peace is long, but as history has shown, no crisis lasts forever when there is the will to change. Whether Myanmar can rise from this darkness depends not just on its leaders, but on the resilience of its people and the support of the international community. The time to act is now, before the countdown reaches 0. Number 8. Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka stands at a crossroads, and time is running out. In 2022, the nation made headlines as it plunged into its worst economic crisis in decades. A crisis so severe that it sent shockwaves across the globe. With public debt soaring beyond 120% of its gross domestic product and foreign reserves nearly depleted, Sri Lanka was left with no choice but to default on its loans. A moment that signified just how dire the situation had become. This financial collapse triggered fuel shortages, causing long queues at gas stations, power outages, and a sharp rise in the cost of living. By 2023, inflation had surged past 50%, making basic necessities like food and medicine unaffordable for millions. Families that once lived with stability found themselves struggling to survive, their hopes for a better future slipping through their fingers. Now, the question looms large. Can Sri Lanka pull itself back from the brink, or is an even deeper crisis inevitable? There are signs of recovery, but they remain fragile. Tourism, once a lifeline for the economy, is beginning to revive, yet it still falls short of pre-pandemic levels. Visitors are returning, but the momentum is not strong enough to offset the economic turmoil. At the same time, political instability continues to plague the nation. Leadership changes have been frequent, and public demonstrations have become a regular occurrence, fueled by frustration over the government's failure to implement meaningful reforms. Without decisive action and international support, Sri Lanka risks sinking even deeper into economic hardship, with the very fabric of society at risk of unraveling. What happens when a nation loses faith in its leaders? What happens when people have no choice but to protest for their survival? These are the urgent questions that demand answers. Beyond the financial turmoil, environmental challenges further threaten Sri Lanka's future. Deforestation and soil erosion are taking a toll on agriculture, a sector that millions depend on for their livelihood. Unsustainable practices have left farmlands vulnerable, and as crops fail, food security becomes an even greater concern. The country must recognize that economic recovery cannot come at the expense of its natural resources. If these issues are not addressed, they will only worsen the crisis, pushing more people into poverty and deepening the cycle of instability. The road ahead is uncertain, but Sri Lanka is not without hope. The nation has faced hardships before and emerged stronger, but resilience alone will not be enough. Meaningful change must take place through responsible governance, economic reforms, and a commitment to sustainability. The people of Sri Lanka have shown incredible perseverance. But how long can they endure without real solutions? As 2025 approaches, the time to act is now. The country stands at a defining moment. Will it seize the opportunity to rebuild, or will it allow itself to fall deeper into chaos? The answer depends on the choices made today, and whether Sri Lanka can learn from its past to create a future that is not just about survival, but about true prosperity. Number 9. Pakistan. Pakistan, a land of rich history and deep cultural roots, now stands on the edge of an uncertain future as it battles a cascade of economic, political and security crises. By 2025, if drastic measures are not taken, Pakistan could find itself in a deeper state of turmoil. The country's economy is in freefall. Inflation has surged to a staggering 27%, while the Pakistani rupee has lost more than 30% of its value. Essential industries are being crippled by energy shortages, making daily life increasingly difficult for businesses and citizens alike. International bailouts, particularly from the International Monetary Fund, IMF, have become a lifeline, but they come at a steep price. Harsh austerity measures that put even more pressure on an already struggling population. With a widening gap between the rich and the poor, the everyday Pakistani is left wondering, how much more can they endure before the system collapses completely? Yet, economic hardship is just one piece of the puzzle. Political instability runs rampant with constant protests, corruption scandals, and a fractured government that struggles to unite under a common vision. Leadership changes often seem to bring more discord than solutions, and in a nation where power struggles overshadow progress, people are left feeling abandoned by those meant to lead them. The Buddha once said, "Chaos is inherent in all compounded things. Strive on with diligence." But what happens when chaos is no longer just inherent, but has become the very fabric of daily life? What happens when hope starts to fade? Natural disasters have only made matters worse. Pakistan has faced devastating floods that have displaced millions, destroyed infrastructure, and deepened the humanitarian crisis. Roads, bridges, and homes have been swept away, leaving people in despair as they attempt to rebuild their lives with little to no support. Instead of long-term solutions, the country remains trapped in a cycle of reaction rather than prevention, always trying to recover from disasters rather than mitigating their impact before they strike. Can a nation truly move forward when it is constantly looking back at the wreckage left behind? Adding to this already precarious situation is the ever-present threat of terrorism and insurgency, particularly in regions like Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Security forces are stretched thin, battling extremist groups that continue to destabilize the country. Resources that could be used for economic growth and development are instead funneled into fighting an endless war against violence and extremism. The question remains, how can a nation find peace when it is constantly at war with itself? Pakistan stands at a crossroads. The choices made today will determine whether the country finds a way to rebuild or continues its descent into crisis. Perhaps, beyond economic strategies and political reforms, what Pakistan needs most is a renewed sense of unity, purpose, and moral clarity. The countdown to 2025 is ticking. Will Pakistan rise to meet the challenge, or will it allow history to repeat itself? The answer lies not just in its leaders, but in its people. What do you believe is the path forward for a nation on the brink? Number 10. China. China, long regarded as an unstoppable economic powerhouse, is now showing clear signs of vulnerability, facing a convergence of challenges that threaten its stability. As the world's second-largest economy, China's rapid growth was built on an aggressive real estate market, industrial expansion, and a labor force that powered global manufacturing. However, cracks in this foundation are widening, and if left unchecked, they could lead to a serious economic downturn. The real estate sector, once a primary driver of growth, has entered a severe crisis, with major developers like Evergrande defaulting on massive loans, triggering a ripple effect throughout the financial system. For years, local governments relied heavily on land sales as a major revenue source, but as the property market crumbles, their financial security is unraveling, making it increasingly difficult to fund public projects and social services. This economic slowdown is exacerbated by a demographic shift that threatens China's long-term stability. Decades of restrictive population policies have resulted in a rapidly aging society, with over 1/5 of the population expected to be over 60 by 2025. A shrinking workforce means fewer people to support retirees, leading to an overwhelming strain on pensions, healthcare, and other social services. This demographic decline is a ticking time bomb, and unless China can implement effective policies to counteract it, the burden on the economy will become unsustainable. Beyond domestic troubles, China faces mounting external pressures that are further complicating its economic trajectory. Ongoing tensions with the United States and its allies have led to trade restrictions, technology bans, and a decline in foreign investment. These geopolitical frictions are disrupting supply chains, weakening China's export-driven economy, and limiting access to critical technologies needed for innovation and growth. As a result, manufacturing, once the backbone of China's success, is struggling to maintain momentum, with rising unemployment adding fuel to the fire. Inflation is pushing the cost of living higher, further squeezing an already stressed population. If these economic troubles continue without intervention, they could spark widespread unrest, a scenario that would not only destabilize China, but also send shockwaves throughout the global economy. Adding to these economic and demographic woes are the country's growing environmental crises, which are placing additional strain on its infrastructure and people. Severe air pollution continues to damage public health and lower productivity, while widespread water shortages are threatening agriculture and industrial output. These environmental problems are not just inconveniences, they are fundamental threats to China's ability to sustain its economy and provide for its people. With resources becoming scarcer and natural disasters intensifying due to climate change, the government faces an uphill battle in ensuring food security and maintaining economic resilience. The road ahead for China is anything but smooth, and its ability to navigate these challenges will determine its future as a global superpower. While the country has shown resilience in the past, failure to address these pressing issues could result in economic stagnation, increasing social unrest, and a loss of global influence. For those watching from the outside, China's struggles serve as a cautionary tale about the dangers of rapid, unchecked growth without sustainable planning. As individuals, we can take this lesson to heart. Whether in business, personal finance, or life choices, it is essential to build stability, prepare for change, and ensure that progress is balanced with sustainability. The countdown to 2025 is underway, and only time will reveal whether China can turn its fate around or if it will stumble under the weight of its own ambitions. As we've explored the immense challenges facing these 10 Asian nations, one thing is clear: no country is immune to crisis. Economic instability, political turmoil, environmental disasters, and social unrest can shake even the strongest foundations. But history has shown that collapse is not inevitable. Resilience, reform, and collective action can change the course of a nation's future. The countdown to 2025 is ticking, and the decisions made today will determine whether these nations fall deeper into crisis or rise stronger from adversity. As individuals, we too face uncertainties, but just like nations, we can prepare, adapt, and make choices that lead to a better future. If you found this analysis insightful, Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the Journey of Wisdom. And be sure to turn on notifications so you won't miss our upcoming videos, where we continue to explore the complexities of our world with wisdom and clarity. Thank you for watching, and remember, understanding the present is the first step toward shaping a better future. See you in the next video.